every man has got the same move with every club. I'm the only golfer with the feeling of greatness. I'm the only golfer living that's got the master move and the feeling of greatness.
Again, coming back to accountability, I think coaching, where I think that I've built some skills is communication.
Totally.
I think communication is a big deal. Taking complicated things and making them consumable in a way. I mean, that's why I look at my business is like taking something complex. The golf swing is a hard thing. We've simplified the golf swing down. Then you coach it in a way that makes it easily consumable. So it can be, so the people you're coaching, they'll never have the time to develop it into a consumable thing for them to speed up their learning process. And that's what we do as coaches. We're like, okay, we're refining these processes down so that you can consume them in a way that speeds up your learning. I wish I knew now, back when I was 24 years old, I wish I knew what I know now, because I wish I was coaching myself when I was 24. It would be a totally different experience for me, because I basically, like you, a lot of things figured it out on my own, then had to go back and figure out what I had learned and then put it in a way that makes sense. And then I coach those things. So again, back to the experience thing, coaching is taking our experiences, our lifetime experiences, things that were valuable to us, and then teaching those to other people so they don't have to go through that experience, or at least not as much of that experience. And that's really what coaching is. That's why the best coaches I've had in the world, they want you to experience it, but they're guiding you into your experiences, right? That's kind of, I think that's what probably the whole process is that, look, just go on this path, have your experience on this path, and that's where you're going to have the most success. I'm not having the experience for you, but I'm pointing you on the path that's going to help you have the most fruitful experience. So, I mean, that's kind of what I've spent my time doing. You've written a book, you helped me write. We wrote a book together on the single plane golf swing. And that's really what it was. That book is a guide map to having an experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, follow this path and it'll give you an experience. And I think that's what we do as coaches. I think that's the most valuable thing that we do. And I always tell people, I've been teaching the same thing for years. I mean, I've been teaching the same thing for 28 years. However, I teach it a little differently now than I did 28 years ago, because I've had experiences in my coaching and helping people that are now, I've refined that into like streamlined. So now because what happens is you as a coach and me as a coach, we find what works. Like you've coached somebody and go, wow, that sure didn't work. That's not working. I've got to refine how I say it or communicate it, or I've got to refine, maybe I put a step in there I shouldn't have put in there. And pretty soon you're like, okay, this really produces the best result for me when I coach it. And we've done that that's how we become great coaches, is we've refined these processes. And that's why people come to us. But anyway, I kind of went off on a diatribe there, but that to me is how we help people have more, was it quality experiences or more productive experiences, I guess, in learning.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of wonderful stuff in that. The path to, we're not looking to change. In essence, what we're looking for is transformation. We want to move from one level that we're looking to transform. But the only way that happens is generally through hard experiences. You don't, when you shoot like for me, a good score would be like a 76. I don't, it's a good round. Feels good. I don't really learn that much. But if I shoot 82, there's lots of learning that can happen. Oh yeah, this, and this. Okay. Because that's the only way that we learn. It's like a friend of mine says, never learned anything on a good day. I mean, that just really is. That's the way humans, when you're, again, coming back to the, learn to walk thing, you fell down a lot. You learn from that. And so all the experiences that you've had have made you a better coach, and the experiences I had have made me a coach. If it was like, I always equate it to, so I don't think that teachers college, the way it usually works is that you need to have like really high marks. I don't think that the kids with really high marks can become great teachers, because they're the ones who stand at the board of the math class and go, well, I guess I'm working my way through a little trauma here, Todd. Hey, Tim, how come you can't get this equation? It's so easy.
That's true.
But someone who struggled through math and has similar experiences go, okay, I understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
And help guide you through it.
Yeah. It's because, and I can relate to that 100%, because I always tell people when I learned the single plane swing and I learned with Moe, it was because I was struggling so badly that I had to figure it out. And then I still struggled trying to figure it out. And I ended up figuring it out. But the struggle is where my coaching comes from, right? Because I learned what worked and what didn't work. And when that's how I can help people, because I see what they're doing isn't working and I know exactly how to help them go in the right direction. So that's, but if I wouldn't have ever struggled with it, I would never have known how to fix it. And the other thing that I've seen as a coach for me is I know that I can't help people do more than one thing at a time. It's like you can't do more than one thing at a time. But a lot of times that one thing helps everything. So, and so me focusing somebody, a lot of times I find myself just focusing somebody. Focus on this. And they come back, they get out distracted. No, focus on this, right? And maybe there's that accountability piece in there as well. It's like, nope, focus on this thing. This one thing right now is where we're focused. And they get off on, nope, focus on this one thing. So a lot of times it's just that one thing, and that helps everything kind of come together, or help it start coming together. I spend a lot of my time just trying to get people to focus.
Oh, totally. I mean, how often have you had it that you're working with someone that say they're hitting a 7-iron and they're working on, say, solid contact? You know, they tend to hit behind the ball, but you got them working on, ball first, then down through the ball. But they say, I'm not hitting it as far as I usually do.
Yeah.
Wait a sec. No, we're not focused on that. We're focused on solid contact.
Yeah.
And keep bringing people back. And so an interesting way to look at this in terms of like the broad context of mastery and what we're looking for, mastery in all facets of our life, golf, being a great, partner, whether it be being, a father or grandfather, a community member, a business person, is what's your intention? What's the intention that you have? If it's all about, getting the results I desire, well, good luck with that, because we don't control most things. It's like, that with Moe, that the whole thing that happened in terms of what led to the feeling of greatness conversation, I didn't have any control of that. It just sort of happened, it's spirit or whatever. But when we make a commitment that this is what I'm going to do, that allows us to put more of a stake in the ground for who we are and where we want to go. We can pilot our ship.
Yeah.
Now, the problem that we have is that it's so easy to get knocked off course to go into, it's like, is the example I used a moment ago, working with someone on, say, solid contact. And then they, I want to hit it farther. Does that take you on your mission of where you want? Well, no. Okay, cool. So in essence, I'm holding them accountable to the intention they made. And so it's an interesting discussion, because a lot of people want to be, you've been through this, I've been through this. They don't honestly want to learn. Sometimes that's what the question is about. How long is this going to take? Is I want you to fix me.
Yeah.
I want to leave here today. I want my slice fixed. I want to hit it farther, and I want to hit a little butter draw. Well, what responsibility are you going to take for this?
Yeah. I told you the story about Chuck Hogan. You know Chuck. Well, Chuck passed away. But Chuck and I we were in St. Pete shooting some instructional videos together. This was back in 90.
He was a legend in that
90.
He was one of the guys who really, in terms of the whole, say, mental aspect of the game, he was way ahead of the curve.
But Chuck Hogan started out as a golf instructor. Like He started out a technical golf instructor and got into which you can't help it. Like you said, you get into the emotional, mental aspect of helping people. Well, Chuck got known for that.
Yeah.
So if you look at some of his material, but anyway, so Chuck and I are having dinner one night, and he goes, Todd, he goes, here's what I do now when I take on a client or student. He goes, I take him to breakfast and I discuss exactly what you just mentioned. I discuss, what do you want? What are your aspirations? What are you trying to get out of this? Whatever. And he goes, we have breakfast and we talk about this, and I get to know them and hear what they really, really want. And so I said, well, so what do you do after lunch? He goes, or what do you do after breakfast? He goes, lunch. And I thought that was great because it's so true. It's like this conversation. It's a big conversation, right?
It's a big conversation.
And until you get to what you really want, like what's that core? What do you want out of this? But more importantly, what are you committed to in this? Like, what's your personal commitment to this? Then you're not going to get anywhere with a student. Nowhere. Matter of fact, and this reminds me of this at the club. So I'm a member of a really nice club, and people ask me for instruction all the time because I go out there and I teach people all the time that usually aren't members, but members will see me teaching. And then I'm building an academy right down the street. So they know how involved I am in teaching. And then plus I write for the local magazine. So I'm like the guy that's the most seen as instructor around the area.
Yeah.
And they come up to me all the time. They said, Todd, will you help me? And I say yes, but I'm going to say no from now on, because and people know that I'm just honest on this podcast. I do not like teaching people that aren't committed. I dread it. So every time I take on one of these people that at the club that wants a lesson and I'm teaching them, I go, why the F did I do this? Why am I doing this? And I say it to myself every single time, because I'm like, this person just wants a quick tip. They just want like, hey, why did that one go left? No, we're in the process here. I can never, it's my fault. I'll take full responsibility that I should pre-qualify these people or not teach them at all. Right. But I feel kind of obligated to teach them. They're at the club. They want my help and I want to help. But I've just kind of gotten to the point now where I just don't do it, because I only want to teach people that are all in, that all in thing. Right. And if you're not all in, I can't help you. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm not a quick tip guy. I'm a process guy. I'm an experienced guy of correct. And so anyway, I just find myself when I teach the guys at the club, and then I see them at the club later on, I feel bad because I charge them so much. I'm like, it costs a lot to work with me because I want you to commit to this stuff. I want you to care, not just, I'm just another guy that gave you a tip. I can't be that guy. I'm just not that guy.
Completely. I got to tell a quick story. I started coaching this guy, about 65, about 40 pounds overweight. And, I'm not fat shaming, but it's just, if you have if you carry a lot of extra weight, it's hard to play golf. It's just harder to play golf. And so what do you want? He says, well, I want you to fix my slice and I want to get the distance back that I lost. Like what? Yeah, well, back, when I was like, in my 30s, I was really hitting it far. Okay. So we go and we have one lesson, and then the next lesson gets rained out after 20 minutes. And then I get an email from him. And so I've coached him for 1 hour and 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so we're arranging the next lesson by email. He says, well, can we do the next lesson on putting? Because I haven't fixed my slice yet and I'm not hitting it farther yet. After an hour and 20 minutes. And I laugh, but it's not that unusual in terms of the golf culture we live in, because you just scroll on your phone and you can find an answer, a fix to everything within it's a tsunami of information.
Yeah.
But this is where, I might sound like, but I'm sorry, folks. You ain't going to change or transform one iota unless you commit to a process. Yeah. And, why do you think? I mean, it's an effing industry. In the terms of the golf industry, if you want to make a lot of money, people come to you, you tell them what they're doing wrong. Here's the fix. See you in 2 weeks, partner. You'll be so busy, but you won't change anybody. And it's the same with someone buying a self-help book. They can buy that book on Friday on their lunch break, read it all weekend, and by Sunday night, they think they're going to lose weight. They're going to be more assertive. They're going to stop being angry. I'm sorry. Yeah. You haven't done anything. You've got some knowledge, and that's not going to change anything unless you commit to the process.
You said it in this podcast about people come to you for consistency, right? Well, if your processes aren't consistent and your training isn't consistent and you're not consistently developing, how can you expect to be consistent? Because to me, look, I worked with a trainer. I got to like 8% body fat back in 2014. I
remember those days. I know.
I'm not there right now, but I got there, and the first thing he said to me, I remember sitting down, and again, we had the conversation. What do you want? What are you trying to get out of this? What's your goals? And he goes, okay. He goes, Todd, and I told him what I want. He goes, I could do that with just food. He goes, you really don't even need to come see me. He goes, but if you want to like be more fit and more physically fit, that I'll train you. But what you just told me, I can do with just food, what you put in your mouth. And then he said, number 2 is you got to do it consistently. Like you can't just eat good one day or 1 week and expect to get the result you want. You got to stay doing this for periods of time. And of course, I'm a coach too. I get it. It's the same thing with the golf swing. It's consistent repetition. I actually coined a term, and I think I made up a term that I think you'll appreciate. My team wants me to trademark it. I don't know how to do that yet, but it's deliberate repetition, not repetition, because if you repeat stuff, it doesn't matter. It's deliberately repeating something. You're writing that down, right? Because you're going to steal my trademark, but it's deliberate repetition. And it's like, what is my intention? Because that's your
Todd Graves TM.
TDTM. But it's like deliberate repetition is how you stay consistent. Because if I keep deliberate repeating what I want over and over and over again, I'll start getting results in that. But it has to be deliberate, it has to be repetitive, and it has to be, to get that consistency. But I can't let you get away here. I know you got to go here in a little while. Let's talk about. Let's talk
maybe
about.
Maybe you have to get going.
Well, I got 30 minutes. I do, but we got 30 minutes. So okay. Let's talk accountability, because this is a massive one for us. It's we can be the best coaches in the world, and we can have all the greatest information. We can have the greatest processes, but if the student is not accountable, then there's really. It's the same thing with my team here at Graves Golf. If we're not accountable to what we're doing, and I called you a couple of weeks ago and I was frustrated. I was kind of like, Tim, how do I motivate people? I've decided I can't motivate people. And that's a decision I've made in my life. I can inspire people. Like I believe I can inspire people, but motivating people, that's in your heart. That's something that you want, but then keeping people accountable. And you had some great insight to this, and I wanted to kind of hear you talk about it.
Well, okay. So we'll go straight to the topic of accountability. I think there's some core things that happen in place that people will make commitments to take them forward. They will, whether it's in their golf or in whatever they're doing, or say as an employee or a leader in a company or organization. But accountability, it's kind of like Buckley's cough syrup. It tastes terrible. It sounds awful, but it works. The perception is that accountability is about being blamed, being shamed, written up in the book, thrown under the bus, all of that. And it, in very harsh terms, it could be. But to me, if I look at accountability through the lens of how do I learn? How do I use accountability to learn about myself? Which is very different than shaming myself or someone else. You see, when I make a commitment and I don't execute on that commitment, if you will, if I basically don't say what I'm going to do, there's some stuff that happened there. So often you'll have people who'll say, are you going to do this? And they put up their hands. Yeah, I'll do it. Well, those people are pleasers often. And so there's something that's going on within them. And it's usually goes right back to family of origin stuff, that by being agreeable little Johnny or Jane, people are going to like them. That's based on a fear that they're not going to be liked. And so fear is usually the core piece in all of this, is that why people don't do things is they feel some stress. There's, time, say, crunched. Something's going to happen. Am I going to make this sale, or I'm going to lose the sale? I need the money for this, or make my quota, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so someone will make, in an instant, someone will make a choice that's different than what they had committed to. And it's nothing logical. It's usually based on something that like a pattern of behavior that's linked to fear. So if I'm the leader / coach, I will get nowhere if I point a bony finger in your chest. Hey, buddy, you didn't do this. Here's what you need to do. Quite frankly, as the leader / coach, you have zero idea of what's going on with that person. Zero. So because that person is reacting to things. And so your job, and what you'll get out of the more, is if you use it as a learning opportunity. So what's going on for you? What are you thinking about? What's happening? What went on? All non-judgmental opening questions. Because what you're trying to do is help that person self-process. Again, for you to use the bony finger, you're doing this wrong, this is wrong. So the person can become more aware of their internal experience and go, oh yeah, that's kind of what happened. And then they can start to see wider behaviors and go like, well, that's not who I want to be as an individual or someone I work with you. I don't want to be like that. So I'm holding myself accountable. And then you can start. So if you use it as a learning tool about your behaviors and then how to go forward and renegotiate, then you've got something there. But if it's just about you didn't walk your talk and you're written up in the book and you do that again and you're going to be fired, that you talk about motivation, that's demotivating. And it makes, over the long run, it makes zero difference in anyone's behavior.
Well, thanks for that, Tim, because you just scared the shit out of me. And here's why. Because I remember a conversation I had with my college golf coach, and Division I, University of Oklahoma, and this was when I became a coach there, because I played there for a number of years, and then I became the assistant coach, and he kind of put me on the recruiting side of everything. And so I'm out there, and for the first time in my life, I'm looking at kids younger than me, but not much younger than me. And I'm evaluating whether I should go recruit these kids or not. And I'm looking, okay, should I watch him play? He looks like, whatever. And I start thinking, and I started talking to coach about it. And he goes, whoever you decide to coach, we don't have time when they get here to make them good players. They got to come in here as good players. Like we're not here to grow players. Right. And so what you just said there was, like, it's just like when I hire people here at Graves Golf, it comes down to, you better evaluate what the value system is that you're bringing in here, because nothing's going to be easy. Nothing's ever easy. So if these people have great value systems and they work hard and they're accountable to themselves, that seems like that's something they come to you with. I don't have time to hire an employee and grow him into the employee because he's going to cost me money sitting in that chair. He's going to cost the business time. And look, that's our number one thing is time. Like we're all running out of time. And so it scared the crap out of me, what you just said, because you better figure out your value system and what you're accountable for and and if you're not accountable and you don't have those values, you got to grow some values, man. You got to grow some values, right? How do you do that?
Well, so you remember how when I first got into this, I was saying that there's key elements that have to be in play for people to want to be their best selves, whether they're just being as a good person or say a good, say, employee or person in this group. And that starts with integrity. And integrity. And so a good definition for integrity is when my thoughts, my words, my thoughts, words, and actions are in alignment. So what I say and what I do, thoughts, words are, they're aligned. I do what I say I'm going to do. So I think the easiest way to boil that down to is like based on what are your values? What are the things that make you feel good when you're talking to somebody and you just feel some brightness, or you did something and it just feels like that was good. There's just things feel good. You're acting from your values. When you're trudging around and it's, even though it might be blue sky, but you feel like you're weighted down with a sack of rocks and your head is swimming with, oh, did I do this? Did I do that? Was that the right thing? Well, you know that you're probably out of integrity. You probably didn't work from your core values. And that, to me, it's almost like comes down to a feeling more than a cognitive, logical process. So that's why, if you go back, remember that book, Good to Great? I forget who wrote it. He says you hire for character.
Collins, I believe.
Yeah. And then you can train them into whatever they need to do. And that's the hard thing as a leader in an organization.
Yeah. Training is never a problem if the value system's there to take on that. The training's always kind of like, it's not the hard part. It's do they have the value system and look, as a company leader here, we have a great team right now. I believe we have a lot of high value people in our organization right now. It's not always been the case. We would sometimes just hire whoever would fill the seat because we need somebody filling the seat. And then we'd go, God dang it, this person just isn't along this, is not aligned with our value. Companies have value systems too. Like that's a very important part of our company is mission. What do we value? Mission, what's important to us, and what's, customer. To me, one of the things we talk about here at Graves Golf consistently is the customer journey. What's our customer journey? And customer journey, it's what is the customer experiencing from the moment they learn about the single point swing to them taking the steps up to learn and progress and whatever. And we have that conversation almost every day here. That has a core value. That's a core value thing with the company is we want to make sure the customers are having a great experience and journey with us. And if that can be just who gives a shit to somebody else, like, I'm just here doing a job, and making money. Just I'm doing what I'm leaving here at 4:30 is whenever, waiting for the bell to ring, and golf industry. And I was having this conversation with, who was it? This a couple of days ago, I was having a conversation. I was like, here's the thing about the golf industry. We're weekend workers, man. We work weekends, because this is when people play golf. It's on weekends. So if you think you're going to do a 9 to 5 and take off on a weekend and have the weekend off, that's not the golf industry. Now, we don't work every weekend. Like and sometimes Mondays, Mondays guys have off. So our value systems are much different than if you're going to come to work for a job that's a 9 to 5 job. So people come to work for us. I'm like, guys, we're going to travel. We're going to work weekends. We do webinars. I've done a show every night at 7 p.m. because that's when people are home. Like I can't do a show at noon because people are at work. So we do shows in the evenings when people are at home. So we're working around the clock in a lot of ways. And if you come in here with a value system saying, I don't want to be home by 5. I don't want to work weekends. I'm like, this is not the place. Graves Golf is not the place for you. So it's always the value systems that people come in with that have to be kind of negotiated with, and finding the right people that I'm like, I love to work hard. I love what we do. I don't care if I do it at midnight. I love it. Those are the kind of value systems that we have to have here at Graves Golf, and it's not easy to find. It's not.
No, I totally get that. And that's why the golf industry and a lot of businesses are hard for people. So I play in a band. I'm a musician. Lots of people aren't cut out for that world because they just get into a lifestyle that's just dangerous, and it can happen in golf. It can happen in all kinds of different, scenarios. But what's interesting is that we get back to sort of like, it's such a hackneyed phrase, whether we're on a journey of sorts, but, I'm sure all leaders go through this, is that they go through a rigorous process and think, okay, this person has great values, great character, and everything. And so they start working with you. And so for 2 years or so, I'm just making a story up, but they're doing great. But then you go, okay, Bill, we're going to give you this extra bit here. You're doing so well, and we're going to add this responsibility. But Bill starts to flounder. It just and it starts to go downhill. Just your exchanges with him aren't what they used to be. So there's perhaps a surliness, a tenseness. Just things are off. He starts disappearing earlier. Well, you could start having some conversations, basically holding Bill accountable. And if we come back to golf, it's just the same in all aspects of our life. What are we willing to look at? What's real in this moment? What am I willing to take responsibility for? That's what accountability is. I take 100% responsibility for my actions and their consequences.
There it is. Yeah.
I take 100% responsibility. So that's a little tangent, but people go, well, how can you take 100% responsibility for your actions and their consequences? Well, I can't control everything, but if I take that position, then that just puts me in the best possible frame of mind or ability to go towards my beacon in life, to stay on mission, if I take responsibility. But of course, I'm going to make fucking mistakes. I'm a human being. That's what happens. We're messy. And so when if Bill takes it as a personal slight that he's not worth anything, he's not good enough, I'm all this stuff, like, your job as the coach, as the leader, is to draw him out. Bill, you made some mistakes. It's fine. We're going to learn from those. In the same way, we have experiences playing golf in which I hit a bunch of bad shots and went, oh, that doesn't mean I'm a complete non-athletic, spasmodic jerk. I'm just learning this.
Yeah.
But it takes a mature person who's willing to take responsibility that maybe I made some mistakes or what I'm doing, but it doesn't mean I'm a worthless piece of shit.
Well, I can tell you right now that if you take responsibility, which I totally relate to that, you will make all the mistakes because you're taking responsibility. And I always tell my company, look, I'm the pioneer in my company. I say I'm out there taking the arrows because I'm doing stuff. I'm trying new stuff out there with the company. I just bought a piece of real estate and I'm building a training center, something that I'm having to figure out in the real estate world. And I've made a ton of mistakes on this thing. I'm also the one responsible for fixing all the problems with that. I'm totally okay with that, but I will be held responsible for that because I'm the one that's doing it. Right. So you have to go in there. I think you have to go into things knowing that you are going to be responsible for all the shit that happens in those things. And you have to be okay with that because otherwise you're going to be like, well, I'm not willing to take the risk here because I don't want to be held responsible for that. Like if that doesn't work out, I don't want to be responsible. So I'm not going to do it. And I think that's where so many people that fear sets in. It's like, boy, that's risky. That's hard. That's going to take some real, I could be held responsible for whatever happens over there. Not going to do it. And I see that so often, right? So often. I'm the opposite. I'm a ready, fire, aim guy. I'm like, I'm going to go out there and go, oh shit, what did I do?
Yeah.
That's how I kind of operate a little bit because I think it's more important to learn something out there and figure it out than it is to sit back and go, oh God, I don't want that responsibility. I'd rather go out there and fail. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I totally get that. But man, it goes back. So again, I talked about, family of origin, that you're a little kid, and it's really sad that so many people grew up in a family that if you made a mistake, you got whacked. whether it be physically or verbally. And so there's a lot of people who, like, since they were little kids.
That was my family, though. That was my family. But I didn't know. I think I rebelled. I think it was complete rebellion. I think I did things just because I was like, I don't want to get in trouble for that, but I don't understand why, because I think it's going to be interesting to figure this thing out. And I just took it on, right? I mean, I don't know. I just rebelled against. I also think, and this is maybe a little bit more on the esoteric level, I honestly think we're making all this up as we go. So I think we're completely creating our own universe. We're creating our own experiences. Go create, man. Go create. Do your thing. Don't sit back and go, boy, I wish I would have done that. That might have been interesting. Just go be interesting, right?
So I totally get what you're saying, man. But the majority. This isn't. So I remember we had a discussion with. I do a podcast. You've been on it a couple times, and so we had Richard Zokol. Richard Zokol is a Canadian. He played the PGA Tour. He won 2 or 3 times.
I think we interviewed Richard for the doc. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dick is a really interesting guy, and he's really big on the psychology of the game. And so I remember he listened to Howard and I. So Howard and I on our podcast, we often talk about our own struggles with the game. And Howard was in golf hell version, 211. Howard goes up and down all the time. And so Dick asked to come on the show. And he says, guys, what you're not getting is that it's all about just assessment, execution. That's all it is. So you go out and you assess the shot, you grade you, and then you hit the shot, you grade yourself from 1 to 5 on your assessment, and you grade yourself 1 to 5 on your execution. That's it. And he said, and that way you can get out of that, what he calls golf hell, the fear, the thinking. And I went, Dick, that sounds great. It sounds really logical, but we're not logical. We're human beings, and we're directed by our fears, our memories, our wounds, our traumas. I mean, some people might, when you say trauma, people will go, wait a second, that's an overworked word. Unless you got, pistol whipped, or you were in a war, or you saw a terrible accident, trauma is an overworked word, but it's all relative, man. Because the brain is wired to keep you alive. So if you've gone through some shit, it's like a trauma. And so the brain is wired to keep you from having those feelings again. And so whether it be in golf or in a work situation or in a relationship, stuff happens, trigger, fear, fight or flight, whatever you want to call it. And then we're going to start making some choices, because our survival brain, that's what we're working on, trying to survive. So I get the logical part of just, go be, risk, this, that's all great. But unless you're aware of the way that we react and we get triggered and all that stuff, then you're not going to change, because your behaviors and your thinking and all that stuff is in your blind spot. You're not aware of it. So that's why in terms of, when people ask me what I coach about, awareness. Now, you said diatribe before. How was that for a screed?
Wow. Well, here's the thing I hear. And I was talking to a good friend of mine out in California a couple days ago, and he says his son was asking all these questions, and his son was we were listening to the judgments coming out of the room, right? And all these perspectives and his son's take on this. And I finally just said to his son, I was like, life's much easier to live in a state of acceptance. I mean, look, shit's happening everywhere and all that. But, and I like when my world comes, when shit hits the fan in my world, I tell my wife, I sit with stuff. Like, I just go sit with it. I don't overanalyze it. I don't go stupid with it. I just kind of sit with it and see where it ends up, because it's so easy to make bad, rash decisions on things. It's so easy to get emotional about stuff. It's so easy to have all your stories start playing in your head.
Totally.
And I just totally sit with it. I'm like, I just need to sit with this for a while. I don't want to make any decisions on this right now, because people are asking you, because they're afraid and they're hearing things. They want decisions made. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? I'm like, I'm going to sit with it, through it. I'm just going to sit with it. And I'm going to just let it be. I'm going to accept it for a little while. Then I'm going to start taking action. Once I've totally let it kind of sit on the ground for a minute and so I've just kind of learned, this has been through my life experiences. Like I've made rash decisions and I've jumped to conclusions and I've jumped on stuff, and it always ends up just turning into a shit show. Whereas if I'm like, oh God, that ain't good. And I'm going to sit with this for a minute and let it settle.
I'm going to interject. That's your process.
Yeah.
That's your process. And we need processes. And do we hold ourselves accountable to, did we stay true to our commitment and our process? That's one of the key things like I coached, up here in Canada, I coached the University of Guelph men's and women's golf team. And we'd always go into every round, what's your intention?
Mm-hmm.
What's your intention for this round? And then we'd ask them, okay, did you stay true to your commitment? Yeah. Well, after I pumped my second drive into the woods on 5, then it changes. But do we stay committed to what we're saying we're going to do? So this may seem out of the blue, but so again, Fred Shoemaker is along with you, a mentor for me. And I remember we had him on our podcast years and years ago. And this phrase popped out of his mouth that I just thought was so interesting. And he says, what we need to do is commit to freedom. And I went, that's pretty cool. So you're writing that down. There you go. So that fascinated me. Commit to freedom. Because if you look at the definition of commitment, it's holding yourself firm to something, a stance, an action. So where's the freedom in that? Yeah. What I got was the freedom is freedom from my ego, freedom from my rationalizations, freedom from my excuses, freedom from all my bullshit, my conditioning as a kid, all that stuff. I've committed to something. So now when I execute on it, I'm free from all the other nonsense.
Yeah. And you're also free. See, what I hear in that is I'm committed to this, and now I'm open and free to see all the stuff that I need to see. Because you said earlier in this podcast, there's all this information out there coming at us, especially if you're trying to learn in the golf swing. Well, if you're not committed to anything, right? It all seems you'll accept it all. You'll try to figure it all out. But if you're like, no, I'm committed to this, you can block out the stuff that's not valuable in that. And you're free to see the stuff that's going to be the most effective for you. That's that's the way I see it. Right.
100%, man. 100%.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense.
You're committing to your process. And so it makes you free from, the brain always seeks out novelty. That's why when I work with someone on, let's say it's something very, it's very technical, say in the golf swing, I'll say, do this for 5 minutes maximum. That's it. 5 minutes. And I said, if you can do it like every day, say, at home or something, just working on something, because the brain seeks novelty. And so, it's like sort of squirrel all over the place. So unless you're committed, so if we bring it back to sort of like, integrity, commitment, accountability, to me, those are the foundational pieces. Mm-hmm. As a human being and as someone in an organization or a community, is, do I operate with integrity, stay true to my values? And do I look at that? Okay, great. Okay. Now, am I committing based on my values? Am I committing to those things that are going to allow me to be my best self? And if I'm my best self, then I'll be my best teammate. I'll be my best leader.
Yeah.
And executing on those things.
And those are the people that you want on your team. Because you can trust that they're gonna execute based on their value systems. That's where that word trust comes into this whole thing to me.
Yeah.
Because you know exactly where they're going to be, how they stand on things, what you can expect from them. And that's everything to me. I love that.
Yeah. And especially, and so but it's not a straitjacket. So someone can make a commitment. They're going to do something. Well, let's say it's 4:00 on a Friday. Your people are starting to go home or whatever. And this guy has, let's say one of your guys has something to do. Maybe it's a shipment out the door, but he gets a call from a really upset customer. So he committed to getting that thing out the door, but the higher priority is dealing with that upset customer.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to have to shift in terms of his priorities. So maybe he didn't execute on getting that golf club out to UPS and thus be delivered on Monday, in which he promised one person. But he discerned that if I don't work with this upset customer, then the shite will really hit the fan, because you don't want to, because you could give up, you could maybe say imperil one sale, but you could imperil hundreds of sales if you don't deal with the upset customer.
Well, but here's where it still comes down to trust to me, because whatever that person does, I know he did the high value thing at that moment. That's all I need to know, right? I don't need to know why the shipment didn't go out. He might explain it, but I'm going to say, I know whatever you did was the high value thing, because you're a high value person and you always deal high value. So that's why I just trust everybody in my environment to do the right thing. And that's all that matters to me. And that, okay, the shipment got there late, we'll deal with that, but you did the high value thing in that moment. And that's bottom line for me, because you're right. You're going to have to navigate, and there's nothing's perfect. So navigating is the key, but you're going to always navigate to the high value place. And that's where you trust. You don't trust that he's going to do everything he says. You trust that he's going to always navigate to the high value things. Yeah. Hey, Tim, we got to get off. I got another call here, but here's what I want to do. Cause I mean, see, this is what happens between Tim and me. We have these conversations. Tim will call us to check in and say, hi, we talked for 2.5 hours. So we're going to do this again. And I got plenty of stuff I want to talk to you about. We didn't even get into the documentary, which I would definitely want to talk to you about in the next time. So we're going to do a round 2 of the podcast. So Tim, I appreciate you spending that time with us on the Feeling Greatness podcast. As always, I could speak with you for hours, and we do speak for hours. And I'll just tell everybody right now that this was kind of a kitchen conversation. We kind of had a little kitchen conversation here, one of the many we've had before. So we'll do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so if people are interested in learning more about what I do, so I deliver workshops. They're called Commit to Freedom, the Key to Peak Performance. And the key subject I talk about is accountability and how it's related to integrity and commitment. And the core question that we go after, 2 core questions, is why do my people say they're going to do something and then not do it? So we answer that question. And the second was, how do we build a culture where people can be their best selves and be their best teammates?
Where do they find you?
O'ConnorGolf.ca.
O'ConnorGolf.ca. And I'll make sure everybody gets a link to that as well.
Yeah. And if they're interested in, I also write toconnor.substack.com. But if you just go on Substack and search me, you'll find it. So,
great.
Yeah, I write a bit.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Hey, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah, to you too, man. Great to talk to you. This was really fun.
Thanks. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you on next podcast. Thanks, Tim.
Bye-bye.